All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Julie Allwall, editor of The Wedding Market, and Sasha Souza of Sasha Souza Events.
Well, Sasha, I want to say thank you so much for being a part of Wedding Market's first live stream with a national audience as well as a local audience. We're so excited about doing this tonight.
I was so thrilled when you asked me, and I've had a great time in Dayton.
Oh,
I really have. She's been an awesome host.
oh well, thank you. But before we start, I want us to let everyone know that tonight you can submit questions with the Wedding Market hashtag on Twitter as well as Facebook. So I hope that you will be posting and putting information on Twitter with the Wedding Market hashtag. And then I will be asking people from the audience to come up, and they will come up on this side to ask questions. So we'll do that a little bit later. So now I'm going to start asking questions for Sasha, and she's got this brand new book, beautiful book, by the way. But before you got into wedding planning, you actually went into theater. So what did you do in theater before you became a celebrity wedding planner?
I'll tell you, I didn't get paid. That's what I can tell you. So, so with theater, I really wanted to sing and dance and act. I'm kind of a very dramatic person. But I was always relegated to the back of the house. I was the stage manager, I was the set builder, I did the painting, I did all of the, sorting of all the props. And it basically equated into what I do now. It's about the same thing, only we don't get a dress rehearsal, right? It's the one chance, one time to make it perfect. We don't get tech rehearsals and lighting rehearsals and costume rehearsals and all this other good stuff. One time and that's it. So it's temporary theater is what it is.
Mm-hmm. So what made you decide to get into event planning and weddings? How did that happen?
It was a happy accident is what it was, because I was working in internal audit for a national laboratory, and I was so bored. I was making all the audit reports really pretty. I was using new fonts and colored paper, and the auditors were like, no, that's not how it works. We need like Arial and a blue cover, and that's how it's gonna be. And I picked up a book at Crown Books was the name of the company, and it was 101 best home-based businesses. And in there, one of them was bridal consultant. And what it said was, contact the Association of Bridal Consultants for more information. So I was like, I can totally do this job because I planned my own wedding, right? Okay, which I never knock somebody who's gotten into the business because they planned their own wedding and then decided that they could do the job because I'm in that, I sit in that, right? So I found the book, I signed up for the ABC, I was a novice and then an apprentice and then a master. So the ABC really gave me my foundation to start my business.
So you really got the training from ABC.
I did.
So what types of things did they teach you in the training?
Well, when I took the professional development program, it's now 20 years since I've taken that, and it was just recently updated this year. So if you are not a member of ABC and you're looking for education, they're about to have a brand new piece of this, which is fantastic. And it taught me about budgeting and working with vendors and marketing myself, and the different types of religious ceremonies and the different types of cultural ceremonies. And there were a lot of pieces in there that starting out, you wouldn't really know. And it gave me just enough information to make me want to know more and want to learn more and want to do more. And that's sort of how it started.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you, I picked up Sasha yesterday at the airport, and we had some long conversations. And one of the things, she actually made me cry. Oh. She was telling me a story about your daughter, yeah. And then she just got married.
She did.
And she's your. Why don't you explain
I'm
how?
I'm a birth mom, right? So I have a daughter that I put up for adoption when I was 18 years old. So, and Hillary is now 26 years old, and she's quite the woman. She went to school in Berea, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland. So she's a yellow jacket, I think it's a yellow jacket. And she graduated from there and got her Bachelor of Music from BW. And my relationship with Hillary is that she did get the singing, the dancing, and the acting gene that somehow mysteriously skipped me. And her adopted parents were very into that type of experience for her. So they encouraged her. Her adopted mom is Chinese, and she is not. So she always knew she was adopted. And she used to go through and tell people, if your mom really loved you, she would have put you up for adoption. And the other moms were like, hold on a second, right? It was open, but I didn't have any personal contact with her. I would go watch her shows. I would watch her grow up, but then I went home at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you were talking about the situation with the wedding. There was I guess her dad was sick.
Her dad, her adopted father, right? Who is her dad? He had end-stage liver failure. And she got engaged over Christmas and everyone was thrilled because we love her husband, Brandon. But we found out that he had about a month to live. And it was in the very first few days, Hillary said, the most important thing to me is that he walks me down the aisle. My dad has to walk me down the aisle and I want to get married right now. And her husband said, absolutely, let's do this. We planned the wedding in a week. It was 20 people. It was the most amazing ceremony and it was so full of incredible love and support and everything that the wedding is supposed to be that I think sometimes gets lost, right? Unfortunately, her dad lost his battle a little more than a week ago. So he did pass away, but she has absolutely no regret. She feels so happy that she was able to be there and have him. And, he was able to have words with me about her and words with her husband about her. It's an absolutely blessed situation, 100%.
So did planning that wedding, and did that change how you looked at the weddings that you plan now? I mean, did it make you think differently?
Well, I think I've always felt that nothing is that disastrous and that a wedding is one of many important days in somebody's life. I've never subscribed to it's the bride's day, it's the couple's day, it's your day. It's not. It's absolutely about everybody that you've invited to be there to celebrate with you. It's one of so many days that you're going to have. You're going to have, births of babies and high school graduations and, all of these other lovely things are going to happen in a bride's life. And I think that so much emphasis goes into that, it's this one day has to be perfect, and it's setting up an impossible dream. So I think I always kind of felt that, but I definitely think that, the couple should have what they want and what they desire, and they want to be able to show off, with their loves to their friends and family. But I think that putting so much emphasis on one day is not the right thing to do.
Now, you've written 2 books. Now, the book that you have now, Sasha's Wedding and Celebrations to Inspire, how did you get into thinking about writing books?
Well, it's a funny story. Again, they're all everything has a 20-minute story, right? So I was repped by a major talent company years ago, and I decided I want to write a book, but I wanted the book to be about how weddings are like theater. It was very kind of eccentric, and the book didn't go. I wrote a 50-page proposal. I had a ghostwriter on that one, and I was when it didn't sell, I was devastated. And I've had the same publicist since 2003. And so she was working with this publisher on another book, and we were in New York to shoot a piece for The Knot, and she made an appointment for me to see the publisher. And I didn't know I was going into this meeting, right? And so she was like, no, I think you need to do this book. So that's how this first book kind of came about. And we've done both books in about 5 months. I wrote both books in 5 months. I'm an efficient writer. I have a great editor, but I do all of the initial writing myself. And I think it's a great expression of what we do, because I have no problem sharing how I get to the look of the event and the questions that I ask my clients, because I decipher weddings differently than any other wedding planner is going to for the same client, and that's okay. So I have no problem sharing that info.
Now, in the book, you have a section, it's called Do It Yourself, but you had another term.
It's called Design Your Own. So, because DIY, there's a DIY network, and DIY is sort of like the dirty word of the wedding industry, right? A bride calls and says, I'm a DIY bride. So many planners go, really? Right? And you all know it's true, so don't even pretend like you don't. So, and I think that it's okay to want certain things for your event and certain design styles and things, but I think that it's important that you just kind of push off some of the more detailed to somebody who can do it. So the DYO section is, here's some things that you can do to design your own wedding, but give it off to somebody else to implement. And it actually says that in the book too, so.
Yeah, you also had, well, I guess my real question with the do-it-yourself, what advice do you have those brides that are thinking about doing it? That's really the question I want to ask.
Right, so planning a wedding, and now know that when I got married, I did not, when I started my company and I planned that wedding, I didn't have a planner. So I did do a lot of it myself. And the night before the wedding, I was sewing pashmina scarves, and I was dealing with the favors, and I was oh my God, I forgot to schedule transportation. How are we gonna leave from the reception? I guess we're gonna take my car. Like, there was all this stuff. I didn't schedule the rehearsal dinner until right before, because I totally forgot. It was an overwhelming experience for me. And I think that having great ideas, there are certain things that if you can implement it within a month prior to the wedding, great. If it's something that has to happen the month of the wedding, you need somebody to help you with that. Because you're just gonna find you aren't gonna have time with the seating and the greeting and the hugging and the kissing and all the stuff you really wanna do. Sitting there and tying wedding favors at midnight the night before your wedding, you're not gonna look your freshest.
Well, I know you wrote this book to inspire brides, but I know a lot of brides are using Pinterest. Mm-hmm. What is your advice about Pinterest? I mean, all of us know, that's like stuff that's already out there. What can they do to get new ideas by using the book, of course? Mm-hmm. But what are your suggestions about Pinterest?
I love Pinterest. I think Pinterest has revolutionized the industry. People used to have tear sheets instead of pins, and those tear sheets that they were pulling out were sometimes 6-8 month old weddings or year-old weddings before they were even getting published. And so I think that it's really important that using Pinterest, you can want to read that, that using Pinterest is something that brides use for inspiration, that they don't have to necessarily copy every single piece of it, but they definitely want to use it for what it's supposed to be, for inspiration.
Okay. Now, you've done a number of celebrity weddings. What are some of the
challenges? I can tell you the challenges. And I think that celebrity weddings have their own. Let me do this. Let me tell you a funny story, okay? So, of a celebrity wedding and things that happen at celebrity weddings. So, I was doing a wedding for a gentleman who's a boxer, and we were doing it downtown LA. We had like 350 guests, and we had to have security for this event because it was in a public venue. And what we did was we gave all the guests a golden ticket. They turned in the golden ticket. They got a pin that had a crown on it because he called his now wife the queen, right? So everyone got a crown pin if they came to the ceremony, came to the reception. I had somebody walk up to the event, and they said that I'm here for the party. And we were like, okay, well, what's your name? We look on the guest list, and he's like, well, I'm not on the list. I'm Fernando's attorney's cousin, and he told me I could come to the wedding. And he's wearing like a NASCAR t-shirt and jeans. And I'm all like, I don't think so. And I said, well, what's your name? And he gave me his name, and I said, well, let me just check in with Fernando. And Fernando said to me on the phone, oh, hell no. It was exactly like that. And I hung up, and I said, well, sir, here's the problem. I said, unfortunately, the attorney is not paying for this event. Fernando's paying for this event. So I can't allow you to come in. You need to depart. Reception's about to start. So, I mean, who it is, it doesn't really matter, because there's always these things that happen. There's stage shots that have to happen for people who have provided any sponsorships and things like that. You have to kind of build into your timeline.
Now, in the book, I know you also have color palettes.
I did.
Now, how would you encourage the brides or even event planners to use these color palettes to help with their events?
Right. So the color palettes are, there's 30 of them in total. And I think so many brides pick one main color, maybe 2 ancillary colors. And I go up to 5, 6 colors. because I think that for us, for the color, it's important you have a lot of tertiary, you know, your first, second, and third color, and then 2 other accents. And how you would use them is you can use them in your tablecloths, you can use them in your flowers. Every single palette goes with a photograph. So if you love this bouquet, all of the Pantone numbers are at the bottom, right? So you can actually pull your favorite Pantone numbers, share that with your invitation designer, with your wedding planner and all that stuff, and they can kind of, you know, make that wedding happen out of those colors.
Now, also in the book, you give them certain, like, must-have tips. Can you share maybe some of those tips that you put in the book?
Must-have with regard to, because I give a lot of tips in that book. So I'm like, there's a lot of stuff in that book. With regard to what? Exactly.
Well, I think some of the things that maybe some of the brides don't think about. Mm-hmm. You know, it's, I know even with my own wedding, or even with my sister's wedding, no matter how, you know, hard you plan, there's always going to be something that you didn't think about, or it just happens.
Right.
But it's not something to stress over. But I mean, if there were some tips that you would give them, what would it be that they don't think about necessarily?
I mean, and I don't want to go to like the absolute negative, but some of the things that a bride would want to think about is, you know, you can't control everything, right? So something is inevitably going to happen on the wedding day that's going to make you unhappy. Nobody's going to know about it unless you tell them, right? So if it's the wrong color napkin, or, you know, your bridesmaid isn't being super nice, or whatever the problem may be, unless you announce it to the world, nobody knows. And I think that it's also important, another tip is to really consider that the wedding is about the guest experience, and making sure that the guests are happy and they're well fed, they have drink, they're warm, they're cool, whatever the situation may be. So you definitely want to, you know, kind of take everything in stride.
Now, we had some questions, I know, that came across on Twitter a little bit. Let me take a look here. There was one that asked a wedding question about. Oh, here's an interesting one from S Events, Hillary. What is the strangest thing that has given you inspiration for an event?
Okay, so I'm just going to tell you, that's my daughter. Sneaky girl. Anyway, so so some of the strangest things that we've dealt with, and she would know this too, is like we've designed entire weddings like around somebody's rug. The colors in the rug. In a painting, I have a great story. So this couple bought this painting, and one of the questions I ask in a design questionnaire is, what are your favorite colors? What are your least favorite colors? And she says her favorite colors are orange, red, and black, doesn't like brown. He comes back and says he likes purple and brown, doesn't like orange and red. Right? I'm like, oh my God, I'm dead in the water. I'm like, they're like, shoo. Well, they had this one piece of art that was this, you know, beautiful watercolor or rather oil painting of a wine glass. And I used that painting to design their entire event. And it had all those colors in it, by the way, but they were all married in such a lovely way. So it made it acceptable. So we took like the orange and the purple, and we did the ceremony, and then we moved into like red with a dark chair, and you know, so that's one of the oddest things we've probably had to do.
Now, the same person also asked another question, which was really good. I do want to ask, and it said, what advice would you give to an inspiring event coordinator on getting started in the wedding industry?
Okay, yeah. So I highly recommend the ABC, and not just because I'm a member, but because I think they have great education and a great support system. So certainly education is number one. You have to get educated. You have to learn who's who in the industry, pretty much the right way to deal with managing a client, booking a client, marketing yourself. And that's a hard thing to learn as a startup, just like throw your shingle out. So I would strongly suggest contacting the Association of Bridal Consultants, talk to them about their training programs. They also have conferences where you're going to get to meet people who are willing to share information with you.
Okay. Well, I think at this point we're going to have some of the people in the audience. I think there are several. I think that was going to come up over here. So go ahead and come up here. Those individuals that was going to ask some questions. So go ahead and make your way up. And all right. Now, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then just go ahead and ask Sasha your question.
Hi, I'm Brenda Pottinger with Pottinger Photography, a local vendor. And I wanted to ask you, how do you make time with your busy life to write a book?
So with both books, we did them, like I said, in about 5 months of worth of writing from the time I booked the contract until it went out for printing. And I'm super organized about stuff like that. So what I'm looking at is how many chapters I need, how many words per chapter. I have a Dropbox of, different chapters and what images I want, and then I rely heavily on a great layout artist who's going to lay it out, and then I can sort of write to it. But I do spend, time in the evening. I mean, I have a family. I have 3 kids that are still at home, and I just have to write at night. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right, next.
Hi, Sasha. I'm Jeannie Hart with the National Marketing Plan. My question is, earlier I heard you talking about the design aesthetic and the Napa Valley West Coast, difference from Florida. Since we're in the Midwest, what advice would you have for the Midwest bride? What type of design are you seeing?
And this is one of the most common things I hear when I go to a speaking engagement and I show images of our newest weddings. So people will say to me, oh, that'll never fly where I live. I live in the Midwest. And I think to myself, why not? So step out of what it's supposed to be and really do something special. It doesn't have to be the same as it ever was. It doesn't have to be the trend that's now fading on the coast. You can absolutely come and set a trend in the Midwest. I think that it's important to know that you don't have to do it the same way it's always been done.
How do you think, I know there's price differences, in California and the Midwest. Before we go to our next question, how can they get the same value at maybe some lower prices to get the same effect?
Right, and I think that a lot of our effect comes in our linens, right? So the linens that we use and the amount of flowers that we use in our events. So, and again, not to be able to speak to pricing here versus pricing there because it's total dichotomy, right? So I think that, certainly looking at using different colors on your tabletop, maybe, a couple of different patterns with the color. We always choose 3 linens for our events, for our dinners, that is. And we'll do maybe 2 patterns and 1 that's not patterned. It doesn't have to be the most expensive thing out there, but having a little bit of something extra kind of just raises the bar on it. So, and I think that, not going with a linen that doesn't touch the floor is another way.
Okay. Next question.
Hi, I'm Carly Dixon with Green Me. And I'm wondering if you hold a post-event interview with your clients to get their feedback. And if you do you ever see a pre-event to post-event shift in priorities? That your vision before the event versus sort of your reminiscing and reflecting after the event shows something that maybe a future bride planning might want to keep in mind?
And usually I don't do I hate the term post-mortem, but that's basically what it is, right? With the bride. They're usually off to their honeymoon, they'll send us an email from their honeymoon. We become friends on Facebook, what have you. Usually right there at the event, they always say this is much more magical or much more amazing than I ever thought it would have been. We don't do mock-up centerpieces or mock-ups of tables. So when they show up, they're seeing it in full for the first time. And so for that reason, I think that their expectation is kind of here. So we just kind of blow them away. Yeah.
I'm going to ask one of the questions from Twitter. This is from Monica, and she says, how do you make the groom feel more involved in the wedding planning process?
Oh, absolutely excellent question. So when we're having a meeting with a couple, and the bride is sort of railroading the groom, I have no issues saying to her, you know what, we wouldn't be having this conversation if he weren't here, so let's give him a few things that he wants. You know what I mean? I think that that it's so important to be about the couple and who they are, and who they are as a couple as well. Like, how do they celebrate? Like, if they were to invite 100 people over their house, what would they do? I find that my grooms really want to have a lot of input in the food, the music, the venue, and whatever's being served at the bar. Like, those are their things that are important. And certainly some are into the flowers and some are, you know, into other things. But I find that giving those types of assignments really kind of makes everybody happy. And it's never good to, you know, kind of put aside your spouse, you know, because it's a practice for marriage. I mean, because marriage is about compromise, and, you know, you have to compromise when you're getting married too.
All right, I'll go ahead and have the next question.
Hi, my name is Autumn, here by Aunt Marie. My question to you is, you know, being in a smaller city like Dayton, Ohio, and so forth, you know, there are a lot of photographers, florists, hairstylists, you know, the whole wedding, you know, thing with it. And I was just wondering, what do you recommend as far as making your business stand out in between everybody else?
So I actually don't regularly look at websites of the people in my market. I just don't care, right? I just don't, because I want my site and what I show to be reflective of who I am as a designer. So the more the time that I spend worrying about other people, the less time I'm worrying about what I'm doing. You know, it's the whole like water your own grass, don't worry about your neighbor's grass. So that's what I do, and I found that that's just sort of set me apart by doing that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we had another question on Twitter from Jennifer, and it says, how do you encourage couples to think outside the box?
Right. Well, I don't think there is a box. So we start with the fact that there's no box, right? And the event can be whatever they want. I start them with a questionnaire. So my questionnaire is somewhat wedding specific, but somewhat not. And probably the top 5 questions that I ask my clients are, give me the top 5 adjectives to describe your wedding, right? So is it gonna be romantic and fun and, you know, classic and, you know, over the top or weird or, you know, whatever your adjectives are. You know, tell me about your, how do you like to spend your vacation or holiday? Because a couple that likes to go and be on the beach is a different client than likes to go climb mountains. So I'm looking for a site for them. I know what type of site I'm gonna refer them to. Favorite and least favorite colors is another one. If you could eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be? And all of those sort of help us, on top of, you know, 80 other questions, assess them and come up with really kind of creative ideas. People always ask me, they'll say, you know, how do you come up with your ideas? And the answer is that it's my clients. Like, my clients drive the business, you know? We have a certain style that we lend to it, but really our clients are the crux of the business.
Yeah, and an event planner posted on Twitter, when did you realize you had made it in the industry?
You know, and that's such an interesting question, oh my goodness. Because I feel like there's really no room for ego in this business. So I feel like I'm the same as everybody else. I do the exact same job. I just have a different take on it. You know, and you know, it's been a blessing. I've done 2 books, I've done some, you know, TV, I've had awesome opportunities that have come my way, but I feel like I'm the same planner as she is, you know? I will tell you that I consider myself a salesperson, number 1, before I'm a wedding planner. So I have to sell myself, sell my vision, sell my vendors, sell my vendor's vision to my client. My number 1 job is sales.
That's an interesting thinking, because a lot of times when I talk with wedding planners, they don't see themselves necessarily as a salesperson. They think more of the creative side.
I'm still selling the creative. I mean, if I can't convince a client to do, like, okay, if you were to look in the new book, there's a wedding for Katie and Steve, and it has an open air tent ceiling that's 2,000 yards of ribbon, right? And it was maybe 3 weeks before the wedding. I saw a much smaller version of some draped ribbons on Pinterest. And I was like, ding, how do I do a 90 by 40 tent in like this? And I called Katie and I said, so I got this crazy idea. I want to do this thing. And I went over it with her and she was like, absolutely, how much is it? And I told her and she was like, I don't care, it sounds fantastic. So we did it, and it all came from, just me being able to sell it to her and convince her on something she's never seen before that it would be absolutely show-stopping. I sold it to her.
Well, let's go for the brides as far as like advice, because we're getting to the end of our program. But what advice would you have for them? That's probably the most important.
Trust your vendors if you're going to hire them. So if you feel comfortable enough to hire somebody and pay them for their services, you should trust them to do the job that you hired them to do. And I think that micromanaging somebody isn't necessarily going to make them feel like you trust them. You scare somebody into thinking that they're not trusted, they're not going to do as good of a job. And I recently read a quote that said, somebody who feels valued will always go over and above their job, right? So making somebody feel like they're appreciated, make them feel appreciated. And that doesn't mean you have to be their best friend. It doesn't mean that you have to invite them over for Sunday brunch. But certainly if you're going to hire somebody, trust them.
Okay. Well, can you tell us where we could find both of these books?
Well, for everybody here.
Well, for those online.
I'll be out there. And I have a square reader. So
for those online.
For those online, yeah. So both books are available on Amazon. They're available at your local Barnes & Noble. Well, the new one is available at local Barnes & Nobles or at bn.com. But you can definitely find them online.
Any final thoughts to end? Okay.
So much fun. Thank you.
This video will be on archive so that everybody can view it again later. So I so appreciate all of you for attending our bridal event here in Dayton, Ohio, and for those that are joining us across the country and maybe around the world. The Wedding Market Chat, I hope that you will join us every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Twitter, and that's with the Wedding Market hashtag. So thank you so much. And we hope to have more of these events in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.